we'll be able to put together another toolkit for all of our existing family justice centers and, of course, pending. What are we doing here? Oh, that's me. Gail Strack. All right. Melissa's got this going. Okay, here's what we thought we would do as far as a facilitated discussion. This is where you can unmute yourself as well. In all the things that we've done to prepare for this call today, we've identified the following. Number one, we want to go and identify promising practices. As you know, we've been working with the National Advisory Group, and we've identified 4 key strategies that we are trying to achieve through the work of the Alliance. Best practices, guiding principles, leadership, and accountability to survivors. And with promising practices, this one is going to be focusing on civil legal. There's been a lot of interest with video conferencing, obviously the fact filings, so all of this related to restraining order, and what are all the possibilities. So we're going to discuss what is the value, what is needed, what is being done, so this way we all have a good sense of what has been happening now and where we would like to go. So we hope to do a little bit of dreaming along the way. Then we're going to go into, how do you get started? We'll talk about some food for thought questions and next steps. So going back to what is the value of this, I think everybody's already identified the value of co-location and trying to make all the steps to getting safety and justice for victims a lot easier. So there's a lot of value in having victims of domestic violence receive their restraining order or get access to restraining orders and legal assistance from the safety and the comfort of a family justice center. So within family justice centers and doing our due diligence, we found, like in San Diego, where they are able to provide restraining orders, they're doing it through the fax filing method. And obviously the fax filing method is good, but it has a lot of shortcomings in the sense that you cannot send over to the court photographs, text messages, voice recordings, which we're getting a lot of in the San Diego model. We're doing a lot of collection gathering, which has really turned out to be extremely helpful to the court, to the victims, reducing continuances and so many different benefits. So e-filing, we wanted to find out if anybody is doing e-filing. Video teleconferencing, we know that some of you are doing that, so we wanted to discuss some of the possibilities, because you can do it for restraining orders. Another possibility is to do it for the contested hearing. And third, we identified the mediation. Many of our victims have children in California, and the laws are obviously different in each state. Victims must go to a mandatory mediation hearing prior to any rulings that are made related to child custody. Second, so let me back up there. Okay, what is the value? So given what I just said about the value, is there anything else that this group would like to add as we continue to gather our information and resources and intelligence? Going once? Going twice? Good. Okay, we identified all the benefits for the video conferencing and others. So why is it needed? Obviously, we've identified 3 different reasons: to develop and highlight the promising practices, to be accountable to survivors, to increase victim safety, probably add efficiency. Looks like somebody just joined us. Anything else as far as values that you are already seeing or you can see as a benefit? Why is it needed? Going once. Going twice. Okay, are Family Justice Center directors shy?
It looks like it.
Oh, I don't think so. They just think we did our homework. All right, we'll go to the next one. Here we go.
Gail?
Yes.
Hi, it's Tracy from Anaheim.
Hi, Tracy.
Hi, how are you?
Good, how you doing? I'll go back.
I just wanted to say with us, a lot of times our victims are reluctant to even or have no knowledge of restraining orders. And so when we have them here, we're almost, I shouldn't say twisting their arm, but we're convincing them because we have it all on site, because they wouldn't normally do it, or they don't have the means to get there, or they don't have an understanding of what it is.
Okay, so it's giving them also, what I'm hearing, more access to the legal system.
Yes, definitely.
Okay, and I think it's definitely an easier way to navigate the whole system, because the courtroom can be very scary and very intimidating. I remember when I was a new prosecutor, boy, those judges scared the heck out of me. But then, you go, wait a minute, they can't do, if they're going to do that to me, then they're obviously doing to the victims, but it's our job to make sure we are that strong voice. So I finally got over that. But it is scary. I mean, we're seeing it constantly, even when we have like Yvonne and court support advocates, or even when we have attorney representation. It's still, because you just don't know. And even when I was in Tulsa and I had a chance to see how they were doing their video conferencings for the restraining orders, and I was sitting in the room with about 9 women as they were all waiting for the video conferencing to start with the judge. And this was going to be a much easier way to get the restraining order, but I could feel the tension in the room building and building and building, and they were still in the comfort and safety of a family justice center. And as each woman went up to the video camera and had a chance to interact with the judge, and then they would get their order and walk off, they broke down in tears. So the whole process is definitely very emotional and very difficult. So I thank you for that comment. And in light of those comments, does anybody else want to add another, why is this needed?
I think we lose a lot of people from the Family Justice Center. This is Hannah in Montgomery County, to the courthouse, so that we can be helping someone at the Family Justice Center with the paperwork, get them ready to go, and then they either get lost on the way to the courthouse, change their minds, have a call from the offender, and decide that they don't want to go forward with it. So I think that keeping them in the Family Justice Center and having them go through it all in one step, you're less likely to lose somebody.
Good. That's a very good point. And Hannah, it's interesting. I'm going to ask a little question that's not on this. One of the things that I'm learning since we started our legal clinic here and restraining orders and going around to visit all the other family justice centers, what is, well, let me put it this way, how many victims do you believe end up not going forward?
You mean after they've gotten the order?
Right. Or after they've gotten the order and to show up for that permanent restraining order hearing? Because I'm seeing it's probably about 40%.
We lose about a third.
A third, okay. Anyone else? Okay, I think that's what I'm kind of seeing. It depends on the jurisdiction, but anywhere from a 30 to 40%. And I've even heard one jurisdiction say a 60%, which is something to kind of look into, because you got to ask the question, well, why is that happening? But it seems to be a third is the minimum, which is still kind of disappointing, but it is what it is. Okay, so now moving to the next slide. What is being done? Family Justice Centers leading the way. And so now what we wanted to hear from would be a little more information from Anaheim, Montgomery County, Riverside, Tacoma, and Tulsa, Oklahoma. And these are the questions that we've already posed to the various family justice centers. And Melissa tells me that for the centers that will not be able to make the call, she already got their information in advance. And she's put that information. Okay, so Family Justice Centers leading the way. Anaheim, will you walk us through this particular slide? Tracy?
Sure. Okay, as the first one, what are we doing? We are doing teleconferencing. We've been doing it for about 3 years since our center opened. Why did we decide to do this? Unfortunately, my lieutenant and I were not assigned here when this came to be. So, but we assume that, as we talked about earlier, it's a one-stop shop, that the victim's here, it's available, they'll follow through, they won't get lost in the process if someone here walks them through it, and we have advocates that, we have a specific advocate that walks them through it. How did we get started? We began with discussions with the court and worked closely with them to get it set up. And as I mentioned, we do have a victim advocate that works for another agency, one of our partners, Community Service Programs, known as CSP, who assist the victims with the process. So we also work with them. What is our relationship with the court? It's good because of the personnel. Obviously, we deal with the court personnel, and we have the member from CSP who deals with the court personnel. So the constant communication, so they've developed relationships, and it seems to be working. We, as many as, how many do we have a month? We do about 40 temporary restraining orders per month. And our restraining orders aren't just for Anaheim victims. They're for any victim from any neighboring city that comes in. If they need assistance with a restraining order, we will help them. As far as our volume, equipment, again, we weren't here, the lieutenant and I were not here when this came to be, so we don't know the cost involved in setting it up. But as far as maintaining it, it's nominal. And the personnel costs are one of our partners, CSP, provides the advocate who assists with the process. So nothing coming out of the foundation or the police department or that body. As far as stats, we don't have hard data, but it seems like from what we know and from just talking with the advocates that the clients are more likely to follow through with a permanent restraining order because of the fact that we started the ball rolling with the temporary while they were here at the center. So that's about it, unless someone has some questions.
Okay, and anything else that you might add about this process? Because I've learned, well, what else? Anything else that you want to add besides the questions we already have here for you?
I don't have anything.
Okay. How about any questions from other family justice centers to Tracy?
Do you have an advocate in the room with the client during the video conference hearing, or is the client alone in the room and just speaking to the judge directly?
No, I believe the advocate's there because most of our interviews and stuff, the advocates do sit in. So I'm not 100%, but I'm like 99% the advocate's in the room.
And it's from a nonprofit, the advocate. Is
Absolutely.
that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Hi, this is Ken from Westchester, New York. I just have a question as to how the order then gets back to the Family Justice Center, and also is there a process in place that verifies that the order has been served upon the respondent?
Okay, yes, there is the advocate. She is in constant contact with the court because there are also other members from CSP that have an office up at the court we use, or the court in our jurisdiction, and the advocate here is faxing the orders back and forth through the court, and then the court communicates with her when the order has been signed by the judge, and they get it back here for the victim. And generally speaking, a lot of these, the defendant is in custody, so they're served while they're in custody.
Yeah. That we don't find that the case here. Most of them are not in custody in the family court proceeding. The criminal courts, yes, here. But I was just curious as if there was a process that verifies that the respondent's been served so that the client could enact any safety planning.
Right.
Yeah, this is Hannah in Montgomery County again. Our deputies call the victim immediately upon service. They will get a phone number from her during the interview prior to service, and then call her at any time within 5 minutes of service.
That's cool.
Wow.
That's very cool. Thank you, Hannah. I will just add for Tulsa's benefit, they had on-site sheriff officers at their Family Justice Center, and what they ended up creating was a team of deputies who will serve, and they have a great amount of pride in this, that they would serve 80% of their restraining orders within a 24-hour period. And they would have a similar system in place, but they would notify the victim and or the Family Justice Center as soon as it was served. And I think what they felt is that they were able to get more restraining orders served because they moved so quickly. In other jurisdictions, in San Diego in particular, I think we still have a big problem with service. And many cases get continued over and over again because of the lack of service. As you can imagine, the minute that a defendant or respondent finds out that a victim is getting a restraining order, that's the first thing they try to do, is avoid service. And so we've been trying to get to the bottom of this in San Diego and to find out why are we having such a hard time with the number of cases being served. And one of the things that our sheriff does is they go to the place and they leave their business card, what I just discovered. I go, well, that's a clue. If you leave a defendant your business card that you came here to try to serve them with a restraining order, no duh that they'll probably not go back to that same place, or they will avoid service. So I'm glad that that question came up, Ken, about service, because it's a huge issue that I'm seeing in a lot of places. And those jurisdictions that have developed a good one have done a great job. Hold on. Good morning. All right. So we have I believe it's a question to Tracy. It says, good morning. This is Diana stepping in for Martha from the Gateway Center for Domestic Violence Services in Portland, Oregon. This is not just for Anaheim, but other FJCs that are currently video conferencing. Are you currently doing renewal of restraining orders and or modifying restraining orders as well? So even though it goes to Tracy, she's opening it up to others.
As far as Anaheim, no, we are not. So you have to go back to the court for the hearing to get. Ours are temporary. They have to go back to get the permanent.
Same here in Louisiana, in Monroe.
Thank you. And I would say same here in San Diego. Okay, we will move on to keep this discussion going and facilitate it. Oops. Montgomery. Hannah?
I am here.
Will you walk us through what's happening in your jurisdiction?
Well, we ordered the equipment. It has not arrived yet, so we're not currently doing it. But we did it for the same reasons that everyone else did, to create a true one-stop shop where all the services that are primary could be met. We got started really backwards. We got the money from Verizon to buy the equipment, and then we started to meet with the judges, explain to them what we wanted to do, and get their buy-in. You don't turn the money away, the bottom line. But I think the key point, it was to get the administrative office of the courts on board. They were a little reluctant at first because it was new. They wanted to know if it was being done anywhere else in the country. They just were being very conservative. But once they bought in, they were totally on board and are very proud of it, put forward a press release. We'd be happy to send our plan to anybody who wants it. So I don't know if you have it, Gail, but I'll be happy to send it to you.
Yes, if you could,
we have.
send it to
us. Send that out to everyone, Gail.
Yeah, that's what we'll do. Once we get it from Hannah, Melissa does a really good job of taking any documents that have been requested, and then she'll send the minutes from the meeting and also those documents that we discussed to everyone.
And Melissa, actually, I'm out of town right now, and if you could send me a reminder via email, I would appreciate it. So our relationship with the court has been excellent, and in fact, the court is now so excited about this that they are working with the University of Maryland and researchers there to do a research project and report on the Montgomery County plan, and if it would be possible to extend it to other jurisdictions in the state. Dr. Christina Yancey from the University of Maryland. I don't know if she's on this call or not.
I think she was going to try to join us.
She is the researcher. I don't know the equipment that we're using. Joanne from our office bought it, but I'm sure she'd be happy to send you the particulars on it. It was very important for the judges to see the equipment, to handle it, to see that it had tilt, pan, zoom, so that they could get up and see facial expressions, so that they could pan around the room. They were very concerned, is there somebody going to be in the room coaching the client? And that was one of their concerns. They have expressed that they want someone from the sheriff's office in the room, which doesn't exclude an advocate from the DV program, but they definitely wanted someone from the sheriff's office in the room at the time. Maintenance is the issue at this point. We have enough to put the equipment in every district court judge and every family judge in the circuit court. So any judge who may be hearing a case, and I think that's 16, we have the equipment. So that, I think that was a big thing for the judges. They didn't want to have a mobile cart going from courtroom to courtroom. So getting enough money so that the judges feel that it was convenient for them also was important.
Very nice. And Hannah, because we could kind of walk through this issue together, I'm going to ask you to kind of go back, because there were two things that came up. Not only was the buy-in, which you just discussed, but was the laws of your state a barrier? Did you have to get any kind of special permission, special ruling?
And that's what we had to do. So this is called a pilot project, and we got an administrative order from the court. The chief judge signed an administrative order permitting this. I'll be happy to send you that as well.
Thank you.
So yeah, they did have to go that route, call it a pilot project, and get an administrative order to permit it. I will send you all of that and the press release that the administrative office of the court put out, because they were so proud of themselves.
Great.
And Hannah, can you send one more thing in addition to that? Can you send the name and or description and cost of the equipment that you do use? Because I know that is the next step. Okay, thank you.
And what we'll also be sending is, during the time that Hannah was working her way through this, I had one of my law students do a little bit of research about this, because the question can come up from jurisdiction to jurisdiction about the laws. And as Hannah pointed out, I think one of the biggest barriers is going to be for all of us is simply buy-in from the judge. Once they buy into it, like they did in Maryland, they will move mountains to try to make things work. But I would suggest that, this idea of the pilot project was brilliant. I think also judges like us want to be one of the first to try new things, find ways that the courtroom can be friendly to victims of domestic violence. So one more question for you, Hannah. Did you, how did you approach your judges? Did you go to someone who was DV friendly? Did you go to someone that was just the presiding judge and you went to the tallest tree? How did you navigate through the political aspect in the courtroom?
We started with our local administrative judges who were on board, and went to one of the judges' technology committee meetings. We thought that our local judges had prepped the chief judge, but when we got there we found out that they hadn't, and that was a little step backward. So I would suggest you start with your local administrative judges and make sure that they prep the chief judge.
Okay, that's very good. All right.
For the state, yeah.
That's a perfect summary. I'm going to go ahead and open it up to our Family Justice Center directors to see if they have any follow-up questions. All right. It looks like that's covered. Thank you very much, Hannah.
Sure.
Riverside. Looks like Riverside is not on the call. Melissa, do you want to add anything to what you've learned from what's happening in Riverside?
Well, I think I'll get in contact with Maylin one more time and maybe see if she can just answer these questions for me, and we'll add it to the notes that we send out to all of you guys in addition to what we'll hope to create in a toolkit or webinar. But just from our personal experience, Gail, last time we visited Riverside, they were doing video teleconferencing. Riverside is led by the district attorney's office, and I think that's a way that it helped get started within their center. Did you want to share the process? Or
with Riverside, they had a model where they wanted to regionalize. So their dream was always to have 3 family justice centers within the county of Riverside. They've already opened up 2 family justice centers, and we visited both. They had video conferencing set up in both locations. As it turned out, they identified yet one more area, and they're the only ones that I know of, that started to use their video conferencing equipment not only for the temporary restraining orders, but also for the mediation hearing, which I thought was really quite innovative, creative, and brilliant. Because as you know, and this varies from state to state, but at least in California, you have to go to a mandatory mediation hearing. The California law allows for separate mediation hearings with the mediator, who will then make the recommendation to the court. But in practice, we discovered that is hardly ever done. Because of the volume of cases that they have to handle, they really discourage victims from actually exercising their right to have a separate hearing. And so Riverside picked up on that because it was happening in their jurisdiction as well. And they were scheduling the mediation hearing out of the Family Justice Center, because you can be equally as intimidated, and really that is one of the most important rights, is to be able to make sure you've got custody of your children. And you can imagine the implications if there's a lot of victim witness intimidation in that area. So I didn't know if anyone else had thought about mediation or might consider it, might see the benefits of it, so I will open that up.
We're in Montgomery County again, Hannah, and mediation is not allowed in domestic violence cases under any circumstances, because mediation assumes a balance of power between the parties, which you absolutely don't have. So the courts do not use mediation in domestic violence situations for custody.
That's good to know. Good. You guys are ahead of the curve. Anyone else? Or just your state laws, what they permit or not permit? I don't know why we have this mandatory mediation, but the right to have separate hearings. Okay, then we'll keep moving forward. Tacoma. Tacoma is not on the call, but we have their information. Melissa, did you want to highlight this one?
Sure, I'll get started. Tacoma does something a little differently than what we've been talking about on this call. They have 2 projects that relate to one another. They have the protection order kiosks, which Gail can speak to. I think you've seen them.
Yeah.
And then they have a software program through their county, through their court, I want to say, that's called Links. And the website below under Why Did Your Center Community Decide to Do This, you could read more up on this. But what Susan Adams, the director of the Crystal Judson Family Justice Center, told us, and her assistant director, Craig Roberts, was that they use the software system to integrate both the criminal and civil justice systems. And the benefit of this is that it's almost like e-filing. So they can pull up a case or a TRO instantaneously on their computer through the software system instead of having to have the hard copy. And then this also allows for more evidence to be attached to it. But I don't think they've gone as far as being able to attach video clips or photographs. That would be something to follow up more with them about. Why did they start doing it? I want to say that the area is spread out, and so they recognized in 2004, the community did, before the Family Justice Center was opened, that it was more accessible to victims of domestic violence, and it was being accountable to those victims to have kiosks around the community. So you didn't have to drive into court. You didn't have to go to a special building. They were located in safe, secure locations throughout the community where victims can go and apply. And as they tell us, and Gail, I don't know if you want to speak more on this, the system that they use for clients to apply or to petition for a restraining order is very simple, and it walks the client through this in a easy method for them to understand and get through. So if they need questions, they can go to someone who's there to ask them, but it's not complicated and they don't have to go to courts, you know, as you all know, is the #1 scariest place they have to go to. Did you want to add any more?
Nope, I think you did a good job covering what they were doing, and Susan just says hello. We had a chance to spend time with her a couple of weeks ago when she came down to San Diego to see a little bit more about the legal network, our legal clinic here at the San Diego Family Justice Center. What we're utilizing, just to add a little bit more about technology, is that the ETO software program, our team, Alexia, Michelle, and Yvonne, and working with Melissa, they created a new program which helps them manage all the civil restraining orders and the cases that they're handling. So as soon as we fine-tune that, that'll be another resource to all of you that you can utilize, especially if you're using the ETO program. And Tulsa?
Tulsa, Kate is on vacation, but Gail and I have both been able to sit in on one of their video teleconferencing for what they do as EPOs. And I know you spoke a little bit about it, but basically a victim can come in, apply or petition for a restraining order with an advocate at the Family Justice Center. And then in the meantime, throughout that, what they do is they go, someone from the Family Justice Center, an advocate, goes and actually delivers the petitions to the court, and the client stays at the Family Justice Center, and then at a certain time every single day the judge signs on and then hears the petition and then either grants it or denies it. And I think if you go to the next page, Gail, it details more of the process. And as Gail mentioned as well, they are very proud of this practice that they utilize at the Family Justice Center. From personal experience, I think this is the #1 service that clients come in to the Family Justice Center for, as I'm sure you guys all have that same at your center. The nice outcome, or the nice stat that I found was good to highlight, was that the court grants 96% of the center's prepared EPOs, while those heard at the courthouse without the same level of advocacy and wraparound services is issued at a 75% range. And speaking to clients at that center personally, they did say they did feel much more secure. Even though they were still filled with anxiety and nervous of the outcome, it was much easier for them to be at the Family Justice Center awaiting the order instead of having to go to the court themselves.
And I will just add, with respect to that, what's one of the things that we're gathering statistics about is what is the percentage of restraining orders that are issued from a Family Justice Center versus the percentage of restraining orders, temporary restraining orders, or emergency restraining orders issued when the victim does it by themselves. And we're finding that this is a consistent trend. A couple of things happen. Number one, you have to establish a relationship from FJC to the court, much as all the other Family Justice Centers talked about. And then once you establish that relationship, the court is very specific of what they need. And then you develop this working relationship, so it almost gets to the point, because of that discussion and the requirements and how they want to see these restraining orders, that there's a very high percentage of the restraining orders that are granted from a Family Justice Center. Anywhere I've seen so far, 96% up to almost 100%. The challenge still becomes, will the victim show up at the restraining order hearing? The other thing that we've discovered through this process, whether you fax over your restraining orders to the court, e-file it to the court, or do a combination of video and or another kind of filing, is it does come back to the court. What is the court willing to do? Some of the judges demand to see the victim's face. In San Diego, they just want to be able to have access to the victim if they have a question that they can call within a very short period of time to ask any follow-up questions. We've discovered, though, that through the process of the relationship building, our judges in San Diego are not calling for any additional questions. It happens very rarely because you know exactly what the judge is looking for. So it will be interesting to see as we go forward. It's kind of like what the judges do, and as I'm thinking and talking about this and listening to everybody, we may need to start having a discussion like this on the national level with the National Council of Juvenile and Family Court Judges, so they can start laying the groundwork for each and every one of you as we go forward. But I will say that while I witnessed the video conferencing versus the fax filings, the video still put a tremendous amount of pressure, emotional pressure on the victim, because even in Tulsa, where it was just beautiful there, the victims were stressed, they were anxious, waiting to go in front of the judge, and each hearing, so to speak, lasted like literally less than 60 seconds, because the judge was simply just saying, okay, here's your face, this is your name, are you sure, is this your signature, and are you swearing? So it was very just almost robotic, and I didn't get the sense that they were really assessing someone's credibility within that very short period of time in the questions that they were asking. So I wonder whether or not the video conferencing for that purpose helps or not. So I think surveys will probably need to be developed as we go forward. And Hannah, thank you so much for really recruiting a researcher from your university to help us think this through and document the benefits. So overall, I think the benefits will definitely outweigh going into court, because that's so time-consuming and intimidating. Okay, so I'll stop for a second to see if anybody has any comments about the last two that we covered with Riverside, Tacoma, and Tulsa, since they weren't here. All right. Since we don't, we'll go to the next slide that Melissa has pulled together for us, and we're just about done, and we'll open it up for questions. So, food for thought. What are your state laws regarding fax filing, e-filing, video conferencing? For this question, we just wanted to kind of get a sense of the difference of all of our state laws regarding this. And I know, Hannah, you already talked about yours. We talked about California, so maybe if we can hear from Seattle or New York. And I think somebody might be walking with their cell phone. If you are, could you mute? Because we're getting a little background noise.
Oh, that might be me. This is Hannah. I'm in West Virginia, and I'm on my cell phone, and I don't know how to mute it.
Well, you get a pass, because it sounds like you went through extraordinary efforts to make this call, so thank you very much.
Oh, thank you.
Does anyone want to just share their laws with respect to can you do it, can you not do it, any restrictions? All right, we'll skip that one, no response. And what do you think about this next question? How lenient is your court with pilot projects? We heard from Hannah. She says that that's probably a good way to go. Anyone else?
In New York, it's really a case-by-case. We have a pilot project right now for electronic orders from the family court over to the police department, which is working quite well. So our courts are receptive to it, but it is a case-by-case basis.
Okay. And just a funny story about Anaheim. I remember when that initially got started, that conversation, the judges were actually quite reluctant to start the video conferencing. But what ended up happening within that same period of time, I think 30 days from that conversation, they had an altercation in the court between a defendant, a batterer, I think, attacking the victim. And so that commotion caused the judge to rethink and then be open to this whole pilot project. So I think the other thing we haven't raised is the safety issues for victims in the courtroom. And also in San Diego, it's interesting too, initially when we approached the judges to do this, they were reluctant because it was new and different. And then what ended up happening, as the Family Justice Center opened up and there was another way to get restraining orders, we were issuing many more restraining orders than we ever had in the past. And then all of a sudden we flooded the courtroom with all of these pro-pers getting their restraining orders. And then it was actually the bailiff who said, oh my gosh, what is going on? Our courtroom's never been this busy. So when that happened, they were open to the whole idea of fax filing the restraining orders instead of having all the women and children in the courtroom. That's another one, the children in the courtroom. Okay.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that, Gail, because that's something that this is Hannah again, put out all the time. The effects on children of sitting in a courtroom for hours, the effects on the children of hearing their mother's testimony and hearing testimony from other people. It's a trauma that we would like to avoid, and I think that that is something that needs to be added to the benefits, that the children are protected.
Thank you. So we're actually coming up with a nice long list, thanks to all of you, from previous emails and phone calls in this conversation of talking points for those of you who want to start this. Okay, and so the next thing would be, what is, we actually talked about the volume. We got some numbers, some haven't started, but we'll go to the next one, is what will be your focus? Restraining orders, mediation, and contested hearings. And we just wanted to get a feeling and a sense of where you are and which direction you're headed.
Well, this is Hannah again, and our judges have said these will only be for temporary ex parte hearings.
Okay. Anyone else? So it looks like no one has ventured into the contested hearings yet, as far as I understand. Is that right? Okay, and that's an area we do definitely want to go. Hello? Oh, an exciting conversation. That's an area we do want to go forward on. We've had a brief discussion, and especially with our folks here in San Diego, is that in our pilot project discussion, which I like what Hannah did, is really focusing on our high-risk cases. So if our team identifies a high-risk victim through the intake process and we all are on the same page, it's a high-risk client, then we're going to try to pursue these contested hearings. Right now, we will also be working with the court, much like Hannah said, to make sure that there's equipment that the court will be satisfied that covers the panning, the angles, who's in the room, because that they need that sense of comfort. Also, when it comes to a contested hearing and witnesses, obviously all the parties have the right to see and hear the victim to be able to judge their credibility. So that's part of that process. Going to the next question, what will be the screening process? What would that look like for you? So maybe I'll go back to Hannah. Are you taking all the cases for your restraining orders? Or you
we're only taking protective orders. We also have peace orders in Maryland, and that's for dating partners. But the judges have said only protective orders, and protective orders are people who are married, have been married, cohabitants for at least 90 days, or have children in common. So dating partners will not be part of this process.
Okay, great. Tracy, if you're still on the call, how do you screen for your TROs?
When the victim comes in, they meet with an advocate, and the advocate talks to them about their case, and at that point, the advocate works with them and decides together, hey, is this something that will benefit you? And if it does, then they send them over to the advocate that does the TROs.
Okay. And Tracy, let me ask you, what have you observed with the victims waiting to go online on their video conferencing?
I can't answer that because I'm upstairs, so I don't see them.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
There is one question that we had, this is Hannah again, and that is whether the judges wanted to set a designated time for these hearings or to just take them as they come. And they decided to take them as they come.
And I think that might help, because I have a feeling that, Tracy, do you guys do it the same way?
Ours are all in the morning.
Okay.
Our hearings are all in the morning, I believe before 11. And then because of that, because they need to get the paperwork back to the court to get signed, to be able to get the order back before the workday ends.
Okay. And for us, our fax filing, they just, you know, as they're done, they get faxed over and faxed back. In Tulsa, they had them all done at the same time. So if a victim came in at a certain time, they would wait until all the restraining orders are done, and then they would go live, and then it's just back to back. And that day that I was there, they had nine restraining orders. And Melissa, how many did you have?
At least 6.
Okay. Okay.
I'm sorry. This is Diana. I'm calling from Portland. We haven't started our piloting project yet for a video conference, but we are in the process of doing that this end of August. But I think to answer your question, for us, the judges, we are actually doing it in lieu with the courthouse at the same time they're doing it. But after, it would have to be processed in the morning, and then the hearings are in the afternoon.
Okay, when you say that, I just want to make sure I'm clear. Sounds like you would send over the paperwork in the morning, get all the cases together, and then hear all of them in the afternoon?
Yes.
Okay.
We're actually going to have a courier service until we get kind of like an e-filing with the restraining order. The couriers will actually drive it down to the courthouse, and it will be taken in by the family law room, and they will process it, and then the judges will get the paperwork, and then the hearings are in the afternoon.
Okay. What I'm hearing, too, another question is popping up into my mind, how long does it really take to get a restraining order? It sounds like it's all day for most jurisdictions.
Yeah, we will be having participants petition for the restraining orders all day, but in order to get it in with the deadline, because we couldn't get the courts to be flexible with us, they have a deadline in the early afternoon, so we have to get it in.
That's a good question.
Accounting for the driving it down there in the late morning.
Right. I think that's everywhere.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, our courts are willing to accept a fax copy of the petition, and we are setting up a fax machine in the courthouse so that we can fax it over. The court, this is Hannah again, sorry. The court will receive it, and then once the judge is ready, the court will call us at the Family Justice Center and say, you know, set it up.
Wow.
But they will take it, the courts close at 4:30, they will take our faxes until 4:29.
Oh my gosh, we're so giddy. I think in most jurisdictions they have a cutoff of like around 2 or 3 o'clock at the latest.
No, our chief judge said the court is open until 4:30, and judges have to be available to serve the public until 4:30.
I like him. What's his name?
His name is Robert Bell. We have 2 chief judges. One is the chief judge of the Supreme Court, what we call our Court of Appeals, and the other one is the chief judge of the district courts, which is the lower court. And Judge Clyburn, who's chief of the district court, makes no secret about the fact that his mother was a victim of domestic violence. And he's really committed to doing whatever he can.
Well, I can tell he's going to be helping us lead the way and open up lots of doors, because that's amazing. That rarely happens. So thank you for bringing up that point about the deadlines and the court deadlines. That wasn't on our list, but that's the beauty of this discussion. So what type of equipment? I think what we're going to do is just have people send that in. I've seen everything so far from very sophisticated to just the basic type of equipment, but we'll do a survey and get that all to you. And then the last one to open it up would be, where will the funding for this project come from? We heard Verizon being very generous with the Maryland Family Justice Center. Anyone else? Diana, where do you plan to get your money?
I think it was generously donated from our Oregon Department of Justice to have us start piloting this project. I don't want to say that's confirmed, but I think that's where it came. Martha probably has more information from me.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's real good. And Tracy in Anaheim, where'd your funding for your equipment come from? Maybe on mute. Ken, have you thought about where the funding is going to come from?
We're still exploring the idea, and then once we get a consensus, then we'll start to look at the funding issues. We just started our Family Justice Center in May, so we're really focusing on just getting up and running as well.
I think everybody in this room probably had a little bit of post-traumatic stress disorder just thinking about opening up again.
Before Gail moves on, I will send these questions out one more time to all of you and everyone else on the director's list so that we can get more feedback, and in case you didn't know now but you had to get in contact with one of your colleagues, then to get back to us, because our real goal in this is to really collect all of your ideas and thoughts and all the new questions that came up today, in addition to future questions that may come up in the near future, and then kind of combine it and then develop something that we can give out as a useful tool for everyone.
Yeah, I think that's great. And I think that if, judges hear from other judges who are on board, and if the Maryland judges would make themselves available to talk to judges in jurisdictions where they're feeling a little nervous, that I think would be huge.
Very good point. And I think that would be huge. Now, I'm not sure, is this, whose baby is this?
I just thought that picture was so cute, I had to put it up.
It is, but whose baby?
It's a Google baby.
It's a Google baby?
I Googled quizzical expression, and that's what I got.
Oh, okay, so we're opening it up for questions or comments or homework assignments. None.
If you guys are shy today on the call, then feel free to email me. My email is on the next few slides for any other ideas or suggestions or questions you may have, because we do want to make this the best of the best.
This is
Go ahead.
And this is Hannah again, and I'm obviously not shy. But, if you would remind me, because like I said, I'm in nowhere, West Virginia, about the things I promised to send you.
Of course.
And then going back to Ken.
Yeah, I had a question, but it might be served on another day for another topic. But who actually prepares your petitions, and within your different jurisdictions? Is it just attorneys, or do the advocates do it? Is there some specific training that you provide to them for that?
Good question.
In FJC Washington, we had someone from the DA's office that helps to prepare them. If that person is not here because they're out at training or whatever, then the advocate can help do it. And then it goes from there over to the DA's office where it's notarized and then presented to the judge. And he signs at a certain time, like around, I think it's at 2 o'clock, and then the client can pick it up, I think at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, the signed copy.
Hi, this is Robin Saison in New Orleans, Louisiana. I had a question for those who have it fully operational in your jurisdictions. Was there any resistance on the part of any judges to signing on to the process of video conferencing and fax filing?
Hi, Robin. I don't know if everybody's still on, but what we've heard from people so far is that initially there has been a knee-jerk reaction. Well, I don't know. This is new. We haven't done it before. And depending on the judge who gets DV, it's obviously much easier if you can do it that way. But what we have found so far from hearing everybody tell their story is that initially there was some resistance, but with proper and gentle, relentless pressure, they were able to think this through, and the best way to start it off would be approaching your judges in the sense of a pilot project.
Great. Thank you, Gail.
You're welcome. I think some folks may have signed off given where they are and where we are in the conversation. Any other questions? That was a good one. And Ken, what I've seen so far is you either have some jurisdictions that the district attorney will handle that, like in Texas. The district attorney files not only the criminal stay-away orders, but civil restraining orders. I've also seen the advocates do tremendous and heroic work in working with many victims at one time to get them to fill out the paperwork. And in those jurisdictions that are lucky enough to have a civil attorney present, the attorney will help them fill out the paperwork, but at all times the victim has to sign it. Okay, any other questions? Okay, and we're at 11:05, so I think it's time to wrap it up and say thank you all for joining this call, sharing your successes, your challenges, how you overcame them, and all of your questions. We will put this together and get this out to everyone. And we hope to see you next month, hear from you. If you have any questions, just let us know. Oh, was that a group photo? Yeah. Group photo. Oh, updates from the Alliance. Well, we'll just share this picture, and you probably have to wait until next month. But we had a chance to go and to spend some time with Casey at Big Bear to do some thinking about the future, which we never get enough, and every time we do, it's always good to stop, slow down, and just think and bond. So wishing all of you great success and happiness, and one big hug from our team to yours. Take care, friends.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Gail. Bye-bye.